everyone for joining us very early today. I was slightly worried. I was like, this 8 a.m. slot, is there going to be people? But good to see all your faces. And what you are seeing here on the screen is that we've got our debating topic and our pre-debate vote method to join our pre-debate vote already. So if you haven't done that already, if you can scan the QR code and provide your pre-debate vote opinion for us, that will be very, very helpful because we have a very tight schedule and we want to stick to it, right? And while you are doing that, what I'll do is I'll talk a little bit about the great debate, which is what we are all having today, and introduce all our amazing panelists. So, I'm Kinsey. I'm one of the co-founders of The Great Debate. And some of you might have seen The Great Debate already on LinkedIn. We already had 3 different events, 2 virtual events and 1 in-person event in London. And the concept of The Great Debates really started in May in our last People Analytics World Conference in London. And back then, Dan Riley and myself, we got together and we thought, connection is important, right? But there's a lot of conflict right now in this world. And a format of the conflict seemed to come from the concept of debating. And using the most recent American presidential debate, for example, we're looking at 20 years ago, if you watch the presidential debate, it's very different from nowadays when you look at the presidential debate. 20 years ago, it seems like it's more about hearing from the other side, learning from the other side's perspective, where now it's all about they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats, right? So what has happened? Like, what has changed? And what has made people forget the fundamental principle of and the essence of debate, which is learning from the other side? So that's what motivated us to start this great debate movement, to get intellectual minds together, to have a very knowledge-dense conversation about various topics. And today's topic we're going to talk about is AI in recruitment. Is it a net positive or net negative? And by net positive or net negative, what we mean by that, is it actually, is human actually more biased, or is AI actually more biased? And now, without further ado, let me introduce you to your stellar panelists, our team net positive and team net negative. So in team net positive side, in position 1, we have Solange Charas, who is CEO of HCM Moneyball, professor of practice, and at the Master of Human Capital Management course at the Columbia University. She's a new columnist for Forbes magazine as well, and she's also the author of Humanizing Human Capital, Invest in Your People for Optimal Business Returns, as well as many other publications. So that's Solange. And in position 2, we have the go on. And in position 2, we have Shobhan Savage, who's the CEO of Rejig. And what Rejig is, it's the leading global workforce intelligence platform that helps organizations find, mobilize, upskill, and optimize their workforce. And it's actually the world's first company to have AI audited independently, right? So, and that's a big deal. And Shobhan, she's the World Economic Forum tech pioneer, as well as the Forbes Rising Star. I'm seeing a trend here. Here we are having like all our panelists wearing multiple hats. And I wonder why, and why does that make them want to debate? So on the side of net negative, we have position 1, who's Lydia Wu, which many of you is familiar with. She is a chairperson of Data Driven, a people analytics advisory council made up of HR leaders and innovators with hands-on experience. And she also has a passion for connecting people data to business impact. Outside of that, she's also a leading voice in AI in HR, which is very fitting, and the creator of Oops, Did I Think That Out Aloud? So if you haven't followed Lydia, please follow her on LinkedIn, right? And round of applause for Lydia. And in position 2, we have John Fleming, who is a behavioral scientist by trade. Over his 30 years career, John has worked as a chief scientist for Gallup, managing director for EY, and leading scientist at Culture Amp. John is also the founder and trustee of People Analytics Institute, an organization that's dedicated to advancement of people analytics profession. So, round of applause for John. All right, before we start the very fiery debate, I want to remind everyone of our concept when it comes to the great debate is play, right? Well, through the format of debate, we want to have a play. So what you'll notice throughout the debate is that there wouldn't be too much like they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats, right? There will be a lot of playful conflict, conversations, and the purpose of the debate really is about what have you learned from the other side? And our debate will be divided into 3 different sections, similar to an official debate. Opening statement, which each player will have 3 minutes to talk about why they believe the side that they're on. And then we'll move on to the rebuttal, which is a fighting component, where each of the contestants will start to rebut the other side. And basically that's when they talk about, oh, that's why I think you're wrong, right? And then we move on to conclusion, which is when each side tries to conclude their arguments and give us a summary to finally hoping to compel the audience to vote for them. So how is a winner determined? The winner will be determined by the pre-debate vote, which hopefully you are doing now. I will close that vote shortly, and the end of debate vote, which we will launch shortly as well. So each contestant will have a set time limit during the opening statement, the rebuttal, as well as the conclusion. So when they have 30 seconds left, you'll hear the bell ring. Can you hear that? Yeah? And when they have no time left, you'll hear the bell ring twice. So it's just the same as any other, formal official debate. All right. So without further ado, what we will do is that we will commence the opening statement. If we can move the slide, or I'll move the slide, where both of the sides will start to present why they think AI in recruitment is a net positive and net negative. So we'll start off with team net negative with 3 minutes each. Lydia, please go.
All right. Sound check. There we go. So good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us bright and early. I don't think this is a debate of AI in recruitment necessarily. This is a conversation between the age-old argument of man versus technology. If we look at history, technology is neither good nor bad. It really depends on the person who is using it and the case in which they're using it for. Something that powers clean energy is also a weapon of destruction, for example. And the challenge when you bring a concept like AI into the world of HR is that unlike other technology revolutions that we have historically seen in HR, so cloud, mobile, analytics, where it's gone from the consumer market into the enterprise market and then into the hands of HR, we're now in a world where HR is picking up AI roughly at the same pace as the enterprise as well as the consumer world. So it's like everybody everywhere all at once simultaneously. And this is a challenge because if we think about historically how HR professionals have been trained, have been taught about the profession, we're people. We're not technology people necessarily. And when you kind of put that into the context of AI, where a working foundation of technology structure, architecture, as well as data is needed, it becomes a bit of a point of conflict. And again, bringing things back to the nature of mankind, when something is unfamiliar, it triggers a fear or fight or flight response. And what ends up happening is that you see resistance, aka AI is not happening, it's going to be over soon, it's fine. Or you see the fighting response, which is like, let's jump into it, let's get into it, let's do AI, so to speak, and I'm putting that in quotation marks. And when you put all of that together with where people are making flawed decisions using flawed data and now training a machine with no sentience that is also flawed, I think we have a bit of a problem here. So fundamentally speaking, until we can upskill the HR profession and ask the right questions about what technology they're buying, how they're using technology in the process, and ultimately how technology is supporting them, I am genuinely concerned that the overutilization of AI in recruitment is going to take the DEI effort back a couple years, if not a couple decades.
Wow, really ahead of time. Shall we ring the bell just for the sake of it? All right, shall we move on to John, position 2?
Good morning, everybody. I'm going to take a slightly different spin on the net negative side. But first, I have to acknowledge that social science research over the last 50 years has really revealed that an in-person interview is absolutely the worst way to recruit people. That comes about for a number of reasons, but not the least of which is that people don't really know why they make decisions. They're influenced by a whole range of factors outside of their awareness and inside their awareness that drive their decisions beyond conscious awareness. So we have to acknowledge that right off the bat, that human interviewers are really bad. But the question is, can we find an automated or an AI version of an interviewer that actually does a better job? Now that leads to the first problem with using AI in recruitment, and that is, if human beings are so terrible at interviewing other people, the data that we have to base our models on is fundamentally flawed. One of the challenges of building an AI model is the training data that you use to actually drive the model. If those data are bad, then what you get at the back end of the model is also bad. So that's one of the first points. The second point I wanted to make is that there is a number of academic professionals who are researching these very issues. One of them is a gentleman named Arvind Narayanan at Princeton University, and he's just written a book called AI Snake Oil, which highlights fundamental flaws in any what he calls predictive optimization or predictive modeling. Probably the biggest one is that historically we're all, and machines as well, very bad at predicting behavior. We've tried for hundreds of years to figure out why humans behave the way they do, and we still don't know with any certainty. We've documented all kinds of ways that humans make flaws in their decision-making, from primacy and recency effects all the way to stereotypes and other kinds of bias. Now, Professor Narayanan has come up with a rubric of 7 fundamental flaws that predictive AI models make. I won't go through all of them, but some of the most important have to do with the garbage in, garbage out hypothesis, that your data that you train the model on is flawed. The second one... Oops.
Sorry, John, time's up.
Okay.
All right. I feel very rude, have to cut people off, but maybe it's a guilty pleasure, right? All right. Now, we'll move on to Team Net Positive, starting with Solange.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here. In today's economic climate where companies face tighter budgets, talent shortages, and increased competition, the ability to make smart, efficient, and unbiased hiring decisions are more important than ever. And the integration of AI into the recruiting function is not a luxury anymore. It's a necessity for survival and growth in this challenging environment. Today, I'm going to focus on the benefits to organizations using AI in recruiting. And Siobhan is going to focus on the benefits to the candidate and to the human aspect of using AI in recruiting. So first and foremost, AI dramatically increases efficiency. There is no doubt in anyone's mind that machines can screen and look at and sort talent from applications and from resumes much faster and much more efficiently than humans can. In the time that it takes a human, which they say is 7 seconds, to look at a resume to determine whether or not it goes in one pile or another, AI can look at something like 10,000 resumes in the same 7 seconds. So it's much more efficient. what that does is it reduces the time to hire by at least 50%, freeing up bandwidth and speeding up the hiring process. And we know that today, speed is of the essence. Good candidates go away because they don't get fast responses from organizations. So you might have a diamond in your recruiting pipeline that goes away because you're not fast enough. Higher levels of efficiency can be measured by indicators such as time to fill, offer acceptance rate, and more importantly, first-year retention. That's the biggest problem. Second, AI provides unparalleled scalability. As I just mentioned, we can do so much more with less resources. But the most important thing about that is that it frees up your recruiters to actually do the kind of work that they love to do, not screening, but actually looking for culture fit, looking for potential, looking for how we can optimize our talent in the organization, not just on the recruiting side, but also on the mobility side. Lastly, AI helps reduce human unconscious bias. So we heard that humans are really bad at making decisions. AI augments the humans to make more unbiased decisions, making decisions not based on our heuristics around how people look and what we expect them to say, but really based on their skill sets. The AI is not meant to replace human judgment. It is meant to augment it.
You're enjoying that way too much.
All right, please take it away.
I mean, firstly, I've just relocated from Sydney to New York, and this is the most New York experience that you could start your day with. Is like a fight in the morning. So yeah, it's great. I mean, look, I think we are we not done with this conversation? We're sitting with some of the best executives in the country around people analytics, and we're talking about should we use AI in recruitment? And I think, you know, the train has left, AI is here, and our role together is to actually think about how do we implement AI safely. It shouldn't be about whether you do it or not, because if you're in that crowd, you're going to be left behind, frankly. And I think, you know, as someone who has built AI, I'm going to talk a little bit about the process that I went through. Back in 2019, we were the world's first ever vendor to have our AI independently audited. We spent $3 million on that process when everyone was talking about frameworks. What we wanted to do, because I'm an ex-HR executive myself, was to make sure that the AI that I was building was not going to cause any harm, that could be sold to governments, to Defense Force, to some of the largest organizations in the world, and that I could put this in your hands and it wasn't a salesperson promising you that it was going to be fine, everything's great. What we wanted to do was to create AI that was independently audited and checked by a third party. So quite like you get your taxes audited, that's what we wanted to build. It cost me millions of dollars. It took over 6 months to complete that process. And a lot of what our colleagues here are talking about are really fair points, but these were points that actually we managed as part of our process when we thought about this independent audit. So when we look at the data that you're all sitting on, yes, I'm sure in some demographics of organizations, we hire the same people, they look the same. But what we did was we put a lot of data processes in place to make sure that we could balance any of the data before the data was trained. We also made sure that the team that were actually building our AI had diversity. So we are 50-50 when it comes to balance in terms of gender. We have cultures from all over the world within our team. And then we ensured that our auditors were also in terms of demographics, coming from all different countries, different cultures. So there is a lot of work and a lot of effort by vendors, by the government. There is new laws that have now come into place in New York. So quite like GDPR came in, and you all have experienced that over your career, there will be a blanket spread around AI implementation now. And it's more about how do we implement this safely? How do we make sure that we hold our vendors to account? How do you as leaders make sure that you are prepared to implement AI safely? And I think it's really important that we think about that before we even get into what is the pro and the benefits around the candidate. Now, from a candidate perspective, the obvious reasons are there. Our dream as organizations is to create hyper-personalized experiences for every single person. It's impossible for the smaller our teams are getting for us to create these experiences. So AI is like a co-pilot driving alongside you, helping you make good and fair decisions on who you hire, who you mobilize, and who you actually reskill. And it has the ability to make sure that every single person at the end of an opportunity feels like they're special, because the AI can actually create that moment, and it frees your folks up in your teams to do the most meaningful part of their job, which is building relationships. I finished right on time.
Yeah, maybe. But thank you for all your opening statement, and the audience that's sitting there, you probably can sense why is debating so exciting, right? Because so much knowledge-dense content was just shared in the last how many minutes? 12 minutes, right? That's crazy. All right, now we'll move on to the fighting bit, right, which everyone's looking forward to. So the next section is rebuttal, and each contestant has 3 minutes, starting with Lydia, then Solange, then John, then Siobhan, and this is your opportunity to rebut the other side's points. Okay, so we'll start with Lydia.
All right. So I think it's common knowledge that there is a budget constraint happening out there, but I think there is also a balance in that in the face of a budget constraint and in the need to automate, that we don't treat people as widgets, because what is HR technology over the last 20 years if not automating what has historically been broken? The core challenges to this industry hasn't changed. Processes are still a challenge. Driving change management in the organization, no matter the iteration of technology, is still a challenge. Now, AI does increase efficiency and speed, but what is efficiency and speed without accuracy, especially when it comes to people being in the picture? Fast isn't always good, and I think fundamentally going back to basics, it's not so much about the technology being good or bad, it's really about, unless we design the processes to be expedient, no technology will help, because unless we're able to treat our CEO's calendars during a screening interview or a first round interview the same way as we treat our line manager calendars during the same interview, technology will still create that level of discrepancy in how decisions are being made. And I think, going to Siobhan's point, I truly wish every vendor in the HR technology world were as responsible as you are and not just slapping the words AI everywhere, because fundamentally we do get a few companies that are going through this level of rigor in designing technology. But whether we like it or not, there are also others out there, like John mentioned with the word snake oil, that is AI, but not necessarily AI, and your data is being passed left, right, and center and ping-ponged. And with the way that AI is designed, you don't know where it's going, which becomes the most concerning part of what is happening to your data. So I think fundamentally speaking, humans should be doing the creation. Technology should be doing the repetition. However, when the human creation is fundamentally flawed, and when the people that are responsible for purchasing the technology doesn't have a full awareness of where the data is going, how the technology is designed, it is concerning to just lop technology into an enterprise that can impact hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of workforce and employees globally.
Oh. Our time again. Shall we, just for the format of ceremony? Lovely. All right. Now we'll move on to Solange. What do you think about what Lydia just said and what John just said before?
Yeah, so I find it interesting that the net negative side have agreed that AI is here and needs to be integrated. So thank you for supporting our side of the argument. And I like John's reference to social science research, where he says that in-person interviews are flawed, that human interviews are really bad because of context, right? And he says that the recruiters, the interviewers, don't have the time to actually understand how to interview that individual. So it's really personalized, because there's not enough time for that interviewer to do the screening and the interviewing. The screening is using AI to create the bandwidth for the recruiter to be able to do the things that are actually interesting for them, so we're creating better jobs, but also better value, higher level value for the organization. So if we integrate AI, and Siobhan has said that AI can be designed in a way that eliminates the bias, right, through audits and through careful programming. And what we also need to be aware of is that, at least in the state of New York, there's laws in place to make sure that your AI is not biased. Then we can do a better job of actually creating that not only scalability, but also creating that human experience for the candidates that are so, so important. In terms of predictive modeling, this is some of the concepts that we talk about in the book, in the Humanizing Human Capital, is that even though the threshold for social sciences in terms of statistical significance and R-square is rather low because humans are very hard to predict, we still can learn something by doing predictive modeling on large numbers. And that's what AI allows us to do, is gather that kind of information, do that kind of research at scale, at large numbers, so that we can detect appropriate and relevant and valid trends in data so that we are responding appropriately. Again, we're not saying that AI should replace humans. We're saying that AI should augment humans so that humans can do their jobs better, so that humans can apply what humans do better than machines do, which is judgment and evaluation.
Thank you, Solange. Wow, ahead of time as well. Now, John, what do you think about all of that?
Well, first of all, I want to commend Siobhan and her company on being maybe the only company that has ever done an audit on their AI models. In general, the providers of AI recruitment software and AI modeling don't provide any evidence that it actually works. And that is one of the fundamental flaws in applying AI to recruiting at this particular point in time. Now, it's true that AI can help make decisions or do the mundane work of recruiting much more efficiently. I don't think any of us would argue that. But the idea of actually predicting human behavior is a much more difficult task. And it all goes back to the fundamental issue of accuracy. AI can help us make really bad decisions really fast. And that's without dispute. But we don't have a good idea of what recruiting accuracy actually looks like. So whatever we build our models to do, it's going to be pointed in the wrong direction. Some of those directions can be quite harmful. And typically, I follow a rule when I'm evaluating different approaches to different problems, that the first rule is that you must do no harm. And we haven't crossed that threshold yet in terms of using AI in recruitment. So the fact that we can make bad decisions faster and the fact that we don't know exactly where we're going means that we have to be extremely cautious and extremely diligent in providing proof that what we're doing doesn't cause those kinds of problems.
Wow.
I'll take his time.
Target.
I'll take his time. It's okay.
Siobhan. I wish you can. All right, Siobhan, please go ahead.
I mean, John, I love your compliment. We were the world's first, but unfortunately, we're not the only one, right? Like we were first to go and get our AI independently audited, but it is now law. It is now expected that all vendors do. And you have an easy way to make sure that they're actually withholding the legal ramifications that they have, which is to get their certification, to look at their audit trail. So like, as much as I would love to take credit for the only one right now and to sell to you all, everyone should have this. The other thing as well, like when we're talking about accuracy, when you think about cybersecurity, the most cyber breaches actually come from human error. And when you think about that, if we are using technology to protect our organizations from cyber breaches, and we all trust, and our cyber teams trust the AI to really look and be the co-pilot, then why are we thinking that the human is a better decision maker than the AI? The other thing I would say as well, to Lydia's point, like we're not advocating for a world where the human does not exist in the decision. The best AI and the best use of AI and implementation of AI is really good and fair decision-making support where the human will make the final decision. So it's about giving them the data to help them make good and fair decisions on who to hire, who to mobilize, who to, succession plan. And it's not just about, actually the AI making all of those final decisions. I think as well, making sure that the human is always in the loop. When you look at your audits, when you look at all of your processes, I mean, John, you made the point as well about the interviewing, like the technologies that exist now where the human isn't even involved as part of the interview process can pick up everything from, the whole way through the process where we can actually start not using the historic interviews that, recruiters weren't actually trained properly to do the interviews. There's actually scripting and prompts and co-pilots for folks to actually be taught how to interview and then collect that data so that you're starting with a really clean foundation. But I do think that when we think about any form of AI, when we think about implementation, we must think about not, is this a thing that we should do? It's how do I implement this now and how do I implement it safely within my organization to make sure that not only am I giving every single person access to a meaningful career, no matter what their background, right? We've got to think about individuals based on their skills and their potential and not their personal characteristics. AI has an ability to do that. It removes that ability for folks to look at someone and make a snap decision on whether they're going to put them through a process or not. And I think it's really important that when we start to think about using AI, that we adopt that mindset of where can I implement it, what are the boundaries, and think about contained experiments when you're starting to think about, the adoption of AI. We don't want to roll this out and overwhelm your organizations in one go. You want to think about it in a contained environment where you, yourself as executives, can get yourself up to speed and make sure that you are aware, because this is an upskilling process for everyone. So I think just to really finalize, like on what the folks were saying.
Okay.
It was great.
Really nice summary, Siobhan. All right. So now time's up for the rebuttal round. How do you all feel? Energized? Yeah? Now, I'm just taking a few notes, right? This contained experiment, this human in the loop, this AI snake oil. There's so many of these terms. So what we might do after is get the transcript and put it into our AI and see what are the learning concepts we might be able to get from today's debate. Right. Now, moving on to the conclusion component. Right, each team, one member of each team has 2 minutes to conclude their side. And if you can see the screen, given we don't have too much time left, the post-debate poll has also opened. So if you wouldn't mind just scanning the code and also give us an indication of what's your view after you've heard the conclusion and all that, that would be great. And we will go ahead with, this time, it would be Team Net Positive first. So who's concluding? Siobhan, go ahead. 2 minutes, yeah?
So I think one thing to really think about, this is a once-in-a-generation change to work. We, as leaders, are experiencing something that we will never and others will never experience again. And AI has left the building. This is happening. It's all about how you safely implement the AI and learn how to use AI and to partner with AI, not actually to resist AI. When you adopt AI, you will create a win-win-win, not only for your people. So you want to make sure that everyone in your business has access to meaningful work, that they have a hyper-personalized experience where they feel like they've got a consumer-type experience within your organization, that it's being used within your business to make sure that your business is efficient, it's optimized, it's safe. It's being able to create those experiences of productivity and velocity to your customers. And then finally, when you think about AI, when you think about the broader world of AI, if you read the news, there is going to be a skills crisis that we have never seen before if everyone in this room here doesn't start to think about AI. It is our responsibility to society and as leaders to make sure that we leave no one behind. And it will be impossible for us to reskill folks at scale in the way that we need to. We need to make sure that every single person has access to that meaningful work based on their skills and their potential and not their personal characteristics. And that won't be possible with recruiters, with internal mobility. It has to be skilled. And I think it's incredibly important that we think about this. Now, the regulation is in place to protect you. So when you start to think about implementing AI and going on this journey, the regulation is there to protect you, quite like GDPR came in. The New York Act has been the first true act that's come in to start rolling this out. You're seeing now in Europe, they will absolutely lead the US when it comes to regulation because the laws are much more strict. They're thinking about GDPR. So there will be some regulation here to protect you and to make sure that vendors like myself are not kind of selling you snake oil. But I think it's really important that you don't get left behind on this, that you adopt it, you embrace it, you learn, and you really get comfortable and make sure you keep the human in the loop.
Thanks, Siobhan. Exactly, maybe a time. All right, now moving on to net negative side. Can you close us off?
All right. So I think I summarized for our side in that saying that we believe in the AI technology. We just don't trust people quite yet with the technology. So human in the loop is absolutely accurate. But I think the question is, are the people who are going to be in the loop informed about their role well enough, informed about their technology ecosystem well enough to be a part of the loop? And I think it's also about the fact that is our current ways of working designed to have human in the loop as part of technology? Or is this going to be another round of technology implementation where it's a side of the desk job on top of your already 10-hour day that you need to commit another additional hour to? Again, layering on broken on top of what's broken. I think fundamentally speaking, from an AI ecosystem perspective, this may be one of those rare few times where academia and academic research is catching up with implementation as we go along. So the concept of experiment, the concept of having a collaborative ecosystem of knowledge sharing and education becomes incredibly critical to have that responsible human in the loop. At the end of the day, people are fickle. We're not average numbers, as all people analytics practitioners will tell you. So it's about building in that layer of context and building in that layer of individuality. While there may be regulations out there already, and I love the fact that there is, as we have seen with a lot of other regulations in the past, until something goes through court for the first time, our lawyers and legal teams are going to interpret it 10,000 different ways, depending on who is paying them and what their background is. So fundamentally speaking, AI is critical, AI is important, AI will help humanity. The human part of it will need to catch up.
Thank you, Lydia. 30 minutes ahead. I wish that can count towards the points as well. All right, so that's the conclusion. Now we'll move on to a part. We have 8 minutes. We'll move on to a part that's quite special for the great debate, right? Because for the great debate, what we want to encourage is the flow of information and learning from both sides. So now I'll ask the both sides, what did you learn from the other side? So shall we start from Siobhan? All right, don't fight for that. So who wants to go from Team Net Positive?
So I think, as I said before, what I learned is the net negative actually is a net positive, because they're talking about AI being integrated into recruiting. They're just raising the red flag that there may be some bumps along the road. And what we heard from the net positive side is it is net positive. Yes, there are some negatives, but in its totality, this is a positive not only for organizations, but for candidates. The other thing that I learned is I love being on stage with data analytics people. And I also think that that really is the trend of the future, is that we need more rigor and more math and more logic and more reasoning skills brought into the human capital function. And AI is a way to help HR practitioners bring that rigor around data into informed decision making.
Very well said. Thank you, Solange. Anyone from the team negative wants to share? What did you learn from Team Positive?
Yeah, I learned a lot, actually. I learned that there are companies that are providing some proof that their technology actually works. I am still a skeptic. I was born a skeptic and I still remain one, but I'm willing to be convinced. I also learned and believe strongly that this is a very difficult topic to come down one side or the other on, for exactly the reasons that you mentioned. AI is here. It's our responsibility to use it appropriately and to have the skills and knowledge to know whether we in fact are doing that. So it's here to stay. It's going to grow. We just need to be very cognizant that it can go off the rails in a huge way. And because of that, it can provide some greater degree of harm than we can currently estimate.
Thank you, John. Siobhan?
I have learnt more broadly today that we probably need to slow down one little second to educate, because I think I'm quite surprised we're even having this conversation, to be honest, like about the use of AI in recruitment. So I think like that shows you that there is a different level of probably adoption, education, comfort levels, understanding, empathy. So I'm going to try and be a little bit more empathetic to the fact that maybe there's folks that probably need to be brought on a journey, and I'm going to try my best to invest into, you know, putting out content and curating opportunities for folks to learn. And I think these are perfect opportunities for folks to hear. But I also think, you know, listening to your arguments, they did feel very on our side. They did feel very positive to AI, but it's how do we implement it safely was what I was kind of hearing. And I think that shows you that, you know, from a, you know, both you work in companies that are using AI yourself, right? So that just shows that there is that level of maturity that we need to bring the practitioners on. Which I think is a great opportunity because the technology is advancing so fast right now. Even the AI companies that are building AI are trying to keep up to pace. So it's like, how do we then funnel down information to make sure that you folks are able to make good and fair decisions on the technology use? So yeah, so overall, I think that education and empathy is going to be really important from like whether you're consultants or vendors or, you know, folks writing books, you know, we need to remember that everyone's at a different learning stage on this journey when it comes to AI.
Thank you, Siobhan. And very quickly, Lydia, any...
Are the votes in yet?
The votes are in.
Okay.
So that's why I'm so... and we have like 3 minutes. So yeah, just give me one minute at the end so
Okay.
I can share the result.
So really quick, insanely hard to argue that AI is horrendous for everybody because technology advances mankind. Also insanely hard to argue against Siobhan, who is one of the first in her space to do what she has done. Fundamentally speaking, I think this conversation for me even further highlights the need for AI to be one of those topics of collaboration where it's not just the HR practitioners, but it's also the vendor, the investor, as well as the academic ecosystem all come together in the name of bettering the future of work as well as the workforce. How's that?
That's good. That's good. So how did everyone think? Did you all enjoy the session? Did you all like the format? Thank you. Another big round of applause for our amazing debaters, please, because it's all their knowledge that enabled today's session. I believe I have the result of the vote, but I just wanted to double check to make sure I've got this completely right. So for the pre-debate vote, and for those of you who don't know, we look at who win based on pre-debate vote percentage for that's supporting each side versus post-debate vote percentage that's supporting each side. So for the pre-debate vote, I have 71% supporting team net positive, 29% supporting team negative. And so it seems like we have a crowd that's got a very specific preference here. And at the end of the debate, I've got 74%.
Wait, you know which side that is.
74% of people supporting net positive and 26% of people supporting team negative. So yeah, so very well played, both sides. The result is very similar, but net positive team does lead by a very slight edge. So thank you. And hope you all enjoyed today's session. And the Davis Green's going to open today very soon. So enjoy breakfast if you haven't had any already. And the recording will also be made available to you as well. So follow the great debate on LinkedIn. Thank you.